In the 13th century, Dominican friar St. Thomas Aquinas attempted to write a codified, systematic, and synthesized work of theology titled the Summa Theologica, commonly referred to as the Summa. Aquinas never finished his work before his death, but it lives on in history as one of the single greatest works of theology, done by perhaps one of the most impressive minds to have ever walked the face of the earth. Aquinas answers questions ranging from the existence of God, morality of certain acts, the life of Christ, and many more. But perhaps the most well-known section of the Summa, at least the most well-known by the general populace, is his 5 proofs or 5 arguments for the existence of God. And this comes from Book 1, Question 2, Article 3. And the specific question he is answering is whether God exists. And he comes up with 5 arguments or proofs for the existence of God. And briefly stated, they are, or at least they are titled, the argument of motion or change. The second one is the argument of cause. Third, the argument of possibility and necessity. Fourth, the argument of gradation. And the last one is the argument of governance. Now, some of these arguments can be simply stated very briefly, but I want to walk through a couple of them just so we can get familiar with them in a rather summarized fashion. So let's look at that first one, the argument of motion or change. St. Thomas Aquinas states, first, it is evident from our senses that some things are in motion or change. Whatever is in motion or change was put into motion and is changed by something else. Motion and change is defined as something changing or moving from potentiality to actuality. Something in potentiality can be moved to actuality only by something else in a state of actuality. For example, fire is actually hot and potentially cold. Wood is actually cold and potentially hot. In order for wood to move from potentially hot to actually hot, it must be moved and changed by something that is actually hot, namely fire. Now, something cannot be both actually and potentially in the same respect. So fire cannot at the same time be both actually hot and actually cold. Likewise with the wood. Wood cannot also be actually cold and actually hot at the same time. Nothing can be both mover and the moved. In other words, nothing can move itself. Everything in motion must have been put into motion by another thing, and that thing by a previous thing, and that thing by a previous thing, etc., all the way back as far as we can go. However, this cannot be traced back to infinity because there would be no first mover, therefore making existence unintelligible or unknowable. There'd be no start to existence. Therefore, all change in motion was put into change by a first mover. However, the first mover cannot be moved by another, otherwise it is just another thing being moved. Therefore, this mover must be unmoved. So this unmoved mover is commonly referred to as God. Now the third argument is the argument of possibility and necessity, which simply states, in order for the possibility of something to exist, it is necessary to have certain things prior to it. So an example, in order for the possibility of a house to exist, it is necessary to have wood, stone, builders, blueprints, nails, etc. Applying that to the universe, in order for the possibility to have a material world of space, time, and matter, it is necessary that something or someone exists prior to it. That necessity of necessities is known as God. And the fifth argument I want to take a look at for a moment, the argument of governance essentially states that there are things that lack intelligence as for an end. These non-intelligent things act in such a way because they were designed to do so. Because that which lacks intelligence cannot act with intelligence. It only acts as if it has intelligence because it is being directed by something with intelligence. For example, as the unintelligent arrow moves with purpose as it has intelligence. It moves towards its target, but it only does so because it is directed by the archer firing it from his bow.